I'm no tech genius, but I knew if I wanted my business to crush it, I needed a website now. Thankfully, Bluehost made it easy. I customized, optimized, and monetized everything exactly how I wanted with AI. In minutes, my site was up. I couldn't believe it. The search engine tools even helped me get more site visitors. Whatever your passion project is, you can set it up with Bluehost. With their 30-day money-back guarantee, what do you got to lose? Head to Bluehost.com. That's BLUEHOST.com to start now.
Doctors are acting like they're God.
We were lying to the parents.
I've got two whistleblowers here. You said the hospital was lying to the public about what they were and were not doing, correct?
Yes, sir. They had said they would no longer provide hormone-related interventions for transgender kids.
Did they stop?
They did not. They were implanting these devices in children as young as 11 years old.
Today, a controversy dividing America. How young is too young to transition? No matter what your opinion is, we can all agree on one thing. We all want to protect our children. Well, that's exactly what leaders of nearly half of our nation's states, including Texas, claim they are doing as they pass laws banning minors from receiving gender-affirming surgery and care. But some of the largest and most powerful medical associations in the country, like the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Medical Association, the World Health Organization, and the Endocrine Society, recommend that transgender youth be able to access this kind of health care. And those in the community say it is life-saving. Take a look.
A ban on gender-affirming medical care for transgender youth went into effect in Texas today, making it the most populous state to date with such a ban. An estimated 30,000 young people in Texas between the ages of 13 and 17 identify as transgender. The new law revokes the medical licenses of any doctor who provides minors with gender-affirming medical care.
22 states have laws on the books that ban some form of gender-affirming care for transgender minors, meaning they either ban puberty blockers, hormone treatments, or surgeries, or all three.
Without getting this medication, I will go through the wrong puberty, making permanent changes to me that I do not want.
These are things that are being done to children under the age of 18 that are irreversible, that will cause side effects, complications, and abnormalities that they will have to live with for the entirety of the rest of their life.
I have studied the research, and there is no other instance where a medical profession has proceeded with little or no evidence showing whether or not these hormonal treatments are safe long-term. And these treatments certainly are not reversible. That's exactly why our guest tonight, Dr. Anton Heim, says he blew the whistle on Texas Children's Hospital. Dr. Heim made major headlines after claiming the hospital was secretly performing these procedures on children as young as 11.
In March of 2022, the Texas Attorney General, Ken Paxton, issued an opinion stating that, quote unquote, this gender-affirming care could be investigated as child abuse. So in response to that, Texas Children's Hospital, the largest children's hospital in the world, issued a statement publicly, unequivocally stating they were going to shut down their transgender program. And for me, this was a huge relief. But it was very soon after that I found out this was categorically untrue. People would tell me about how they were implanting these puberty-blocking devices into 11, 12, 13-year-old kids. They told me about how these kids had all these psychiatric issues that were going unmanaged and just being attributed to this one thing. The reason they were hiding this program was because they knew it was controversial. They knew that the people of Texas wouldn't approve of it. Every kid who walks into that clinic is being told that they have to adopt this identity instead of telling these kids that they're perfect the way they are and they can grow up to be something amazing, and they're doing it for their own self-righteousness. And once I knew that was happening, it was something that I knew I had to do something about, because if people knew I had the ability to make a change or speak up about it, and they knew I stayed silent, then I could never forgive myself, and I don't think future generations would too.
Well, Dr. Heim joins us today, and I want to be very clear about one thing, because I have looked at the documentation that you provided, and it looks to me like you went to painstaking levels to protect the identity of the patients involved.
Yeah, so absolutely nothing was disclosed. I mean, it was important for me as a doctor. You have a responsibility to take care of patients. And you go into medicine because you want to do that. You want to protect patients from the diseases that affect them. But you never imagine that you have to protect these patients from the hospitals. And when I knew that the hospital was lying to the public about this program, I have a responsibility to do something about it. I have a responsibility as a surgeon and then as a person.
You spoke up because you said the hospital was lying to the public about what they were and were not doing, correct?
Yes, sir. In March 2022, they had said they would no longer provide hormone-related interventions for transgender kids because of the legal risks. And that is as unequivocal as it gets.
Did they stop?
So they did not. And the reason I knew that, because I worked there. In the months following that, people I worked with had told me they were implanting these drug delivery devices in children as young as 11, 12, 13 years old. And to hear that this was still happening after the fact that they said they had stopped was unimaginable. Every indication was that this program was shut down. But behind closed doors, they not only continued it, but expanded it into a multidisciplinary clinic. And when I saw that they were having lectures, they were giving the directors of a program that supposedly did not exist, they were given the opportunity to speak at the hospital's most prestigious lecture series. They were giving conferences where they were talking about concealing it from the public. And as a doctor, you have a responsibility to the people you take care of. If you're not willing to defend what you're doing to those people in the public eye, then it's very likely you're doing something very, very wrong.
Now, coming up, did Dr. Heim's revelations influence the Texas vote that banned gender-affirming care on minors? We'll hear what one Democrat had to say about why she voted in favor of the bill when we come back. You've heard me talk about Jace Medical. If not, listen up, because they're doing incredible work in medical preparedness. And today, I've got two major updates to share. First up, the ivermectin use case. You've probably seen the headlines calling it a wonder drug. The scientist who discovered it even won a Nobel Prize, and now Jace is offering a 30-day supply at the best price you'll find anywhere. Next, the upgraded Jace case, an emergency supply of antibiotics delivered to your door. They've doubled the number of medications to 10 at just $20 more. And now, the most comprehensive and affordable kit available. Get it before you need it. Don't wait, order today. Visit jace.com and use code PHIL at checkout for a special discount. That's JASE.com, code PHIL. This episode is brought to you by Masa Chips. For decades, chips were fried in tallow until big corporations switched to cheap seed oils. Now, seed oils make up 20% of the average American's daily calories, linked to inflammation and metabolic issues. Masa is bringing back the good stuff with 3 simple ingredients: organic nixtamalized corn, sea salt, and 100% grass-fed beef tallow. No seed oils, no junk, just a crunchy, sturdy chip that won't break in your guac. Masa Chips is beloved by tens of thousands of customers and has been endorsed by industry-leading health and nutrition experts like Ben Greenfield and Gary Brecka. Ready to give Masa a try? Go to masachips.com/merit and use code MERIT for 25% off your first order. That's masachips.com/merit and code MERIT for 25% off your first order.
So you have this situation where you have these confused adolescent children who are going into these clinics who are simply looking for answers, and an answer is being provided for them. Only if they adopt this new identity, if they take these medications and follow them down that path. So all that anger, all that angst, all that anxiety is now driven into this one identity.
We're talking to Dr. Eitan Haim. Now, he blew the whistle on Texas Children's Hospital, claiming doctors were secretly performing gender-affirming surgeries on children as young as 11. And by the way, we reached out to Texas Children's Hospital for a statement, and by the time we came to air, they had not responded. Tell us what we're looking at here.
Yeah, so what you can see is that they were continuing these procedures after they said they had stopped. And what the drug delivery devices are is, small little device, maybe about centimeter or 2 centimeters, not very big. And you place it into the arm of a patient, and it will deliver puberty blockers into their body for a long period of time, preventing the onset of puberty. So the most important hormonal process in the development of children into adults is stopped. So that just doesn't affect your mind. It has huge effects on your mind, but it affects your body in permanent ways, right? When you have someone who goes through this, it's 90%, 95% of these kids who start blockers will go on to get hormones. And what you have are 18, 19, 20-year-old men who have the sexual anatomy of an 11-year-old. You have women who, when they go on to cross-sex hormones, they'll have vaginal atrophy. It'll be extremely painful when they have intercourse. They'll have uterine fibroids. They'll have hair growth that will be permanent voice changes. And all this is from a decision that was made when they were 11, 12 years old. And that's something that can never be taken back.
Now, some of the people on this schedule were young as 11. Insert a non-biodegradable drug delivery implant, female to male transgender person. This was in May of 23, 10 a.m., patient age 12, female, specialty services requested, gender dysphoria in pediatric patient, scheduled June 12, 2023, 10:45 a.m., patient age 12, male, starting puberty blockers. This is the evidence that you had, in addition to other things, that this was continuing. What do you make of the fact that these major medical organizations have signed off on this absent studies that show there aren't negative consequences to this long term?
I think that's probably the most difficult thing for people to understand. You have all these prestigious institutions, all these prestigious hospitals who are signing off on this and endorsing it. But the fact is, it's not based on any evidence. It's not based on any even logical reasoning. They can't even define the terms in which they're seeking to intervene on. And this is not medicine.
And you believe that the information that you released may have influenced the passing of State Bill 14, which raises the age to 18 for children to be able to receive this.
I think so, yeah.
Now, Democratic State Representative Sean Theory voted for the bill, and this video of her has gotten 2.3 million views on social media. Take a look.
Members, it is out of respect, caring, and friendship for every member of this body that I would like to share my position on this very complex issue. I am making a decision to place the safety and well-being of all young people over the comfort of political expediency. It is my core belief and conclusion that we should remain consistent in the premise that children must be given special provisions under the law, as they cannot fully appreciate the long-term consequences of their actions. As such, the best practice should be to raise the age to 18 for gender modification. Moving forward with this prudent policy, we should also ensure that vulnerable children and teenagers have quality access to mental health care that is safe and in a supportive environment. Only by taking a careful, compassionate, and evidence-based approach to this issue can we guarantee that we are doing what is truly in the best interest of our children.
think what she's saying in essence is these comorbid conditions that exist with the diagnosis should be dealt with in a mental health environment and at least treated and resolved before any kind of treatment that's considered gender-affirming care be undertaken. Next, a woman who says the doctors she worked with, what they often said about gender-affirming procedures on minors. And one of those is, quote, "We are building the plane while we are flying it." She says no one should be a passenger on that kind of aircraft. We'll meet her next. With so much going on in your life, it can be easy to neglect your diet. Balance of Nature fruits and veggies supplements have 31 ingredients made from fruits and vegetables. They're a fast and simple way to get a wide and colorful variety that fits right into your busy schedule. Just 3 fruits and 3 veggies supplements daily with some water, that's it. Whether you're off to spend time with your grandchildren or on your favorite hike, you can rely on these convenient supplements to be there every step of the way. Start your journey with Balance of Nature. Call 1-800-246-8751 or go to balanceofnature.com to get a free fiber and spice supplement, plus 35% off your first preferred set as a new preferred customer with free shipping and our money-back guarantee. Go to balanceofnature.com or call 1-800-246-8751 and get this special offer by using discount code Dr. Phil. That's DRPHIL. Hey, Dr. Phil here. Your savings are at risk. With the economy on shaky ground, the dollar losing value, and a $2 trillion deficit, things could spiral. Don't wait for the worst. Take control of your financial future now. I trust Preserve Gold to safeguard my accounts, and I urge you to do the same. They're the only precious metals company I recommend. What are you going to do to protect what's yours? Claim your special offer and learn how to reinforce your financial future. Visit drphilgold.com to get your free precious metals guide from Preserve Gold. With gold prices recently breaking records and analysts predicting this trend to continue through 2025, you cannot afford to wait. As a bonus, you can get up to $15,000 with a qualified purchase from Preserve Gold. So don't wait. Visit drphilgold.com today. States across the country have passed laws banning gender-affirming care on minors. Our next guest is a queer woman who is married to a trans man. When Jamie Reed worked as a caseworker at the Transgender Center at St. Louis Children's Hospital, she thought she was saving trans kids' lives. But she claims what she witnessed there was so morally and medically appalling that she had no choice but to expose what was really going on.
I was working in a pediatric gender center for 4.5 years, primarily responsible for patient intakes. The center followed this message that transition would solve everything, that it would solve a child's mental health problems. There were very few written protocols or guidelines. One of the providers even said we were flying the plane as we built it. Doctors are acting like they're God when it comes to medically transitioning children. Children could identify themselves as transgender, see a therapist for one visit, see our endocrinologist for one visit, and end up with hormones that would impact and change their bodies for their lifetime. These were identities that were still shifting and changing, but the treatments were irreversible and permanent. I saw a young person who was begging to have their breasts put back on after having surgery. We were encouraged not to make a big deal out of it and definitely not to tell other families. I couldn't continue to be silent on it. The medical harms and trauma that I saw with these teens just took over my life. I was told I could no longer raise concerns or even use the phrase, I have concerns about a patient. I have no trust in this industry, medically transitioning minors anymore.
Well, Jamie, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
You describe yourself as a queer woman married to a transgender man.
Yes.
And you're a member of the LGBTQ community, and you went there to do something good, something positive at this clinic in St. Louis. What changed your mind?
A number of things. We started to see patients who were experiencing very significant medical harms, being rushed to the emergency room with lacerations requiring stitches. We had patients contact us who were begging to have body parts put back on within months of having surgeries. And the thing that kept happening is every time I would raise concerns and ask about the protocols and ask about the guidelines, this is just how the industry works. If a child says they're trans, there's no questioning it. We just say, yep, you're trans, what would you like?
Okay, so you're telling me that a 12 or 13-year-old who can't decide which pajamas to wear or whether they want McDonald's or Whataburger can come in and say, I've decided that I want to transition, and with no more than a couple of hours or 2 visits, not even a couple of hours, 2 visits, they say, okay, start taking this, start doing this, which alters their biochemistry in a way that you can't come back from.
Correct.
And when you say they come back in and require stitches, this is from hormonal treatment.
Yes, this was a result of testosterone on the female anatomy.
Okay, so vaginally they start having
Correct.
ruptures and this
Correct.
sort of thing. And so they start hemorrhaging, they start having bleeding, and they have to stop that in some way.
The patient called us, I was in the room with the nurse, and the patient said, I'm bleeding. And we said, if you bleed through a pad in the next hour, call us back. And the patient called back and said, I've bled through the pad, I've bled through my blue jeans, I've bled through the towel that I have wrapped around my waist, and I have soaked the sheets on the bed I'm sitting on. And so we immediately had to send them to the emergency room, and they were immediately taken in to surgery as soon as
And
we
what
reached.
kind of surgery? What do they do?
They had to basically try to suture back together their entire vaginal canal. It had torn open.
Okay.
Yeah, you can get lacerations that happen because of the atrophy.
From the testosterone.
And you have to take them back in, and then you just have to suture closed. I mean, these are things happen.
Okay, and you say you saw dramatic increases in teenage girls that had no previous history of gender distress, and they suddenly declared themselves transgender and demanded immediate testosterone blockers.
Yeah, when I started, so I was there for 4.5 years. When I started, I maybe would have 5 to 10 new incoming patients a month. By the time I left, it was close to 50 every single month. And my background is in clinical research, and so I started looking at the data. I wanted to know what the numbers told me. And towards the end of my tenure, 73% of the new patients coming to us were girls who were in their teen years. So in that really vulnerable age of like 13 to 16, where they are just exposed to so many social pressures, and they're so empathetic to what's going on around them too, that they really pick up on what's going on in their peer group. We had clusters where it would be a handful of one whole high school classroom would come in all trans-identified.
Historically, this typically would be males.
Yeah.
And you would have a female how often?
Oh, very rare. And also the ages were different. So it would usually be younger boys who seemed very feminine or had feminine traits to their family, right. And their families would seek care, trying to understand what was going on for their young male child. This was never something that would start in adolescence. And these girls were also learning on TikTok, Instagram. They would come in and they would almost have the exact same storyline too. Like they learned what to say from a video to explain, oh no, really, I've felt this way from early childhood, but a lot of their parents couldn't remember anything like that. And part of what's going on right now is that if you question this at all, you are immediately called transphobic, you're immediately called homophobic, you're immediately considered a bigot, and it's just not scientific reality.
Well, you're exactly right. Coming up, we're going to take a look at some of the troubling emails Jamie received while working at the clinic that made her decide she had to come forward. That's next. Jamie Reed says that her goal was to support trans youth. Now, Jamie says patients had no idea what they were going to be as adults, yet all it took for them to permanently transform themselves was one or two short conversations with a therapist. When you say short, what would you call short?
One visit, I saw letters being written approving children for puberty blockers or cross-sex hormones after a single visit with a therapist.
And how long would that visit be?
30, 40 minutes.
Okay, and you said that the clinic would actually provide them a letter that checked all of the boxes for them to qualify for the treatment.
It wasn't the clinic, it was me. It was my job. I sent out the fill-in-the-blank letter. I sent it, it's what we did. We sent it directly to the community therapist and said, just fill this out, plug in where you need to, and we're good to go.
And what kind of things would it say?
The end of all of the letters would say, I am approving this patient for puberty blockers or cross-sex hormones. They meet criteria.
Now, there were some emails that you saw that were very troubling to you, and I'd like to look at these. Here's a portion of an email written to Jamie about a 15-year-old male patient sent on Friday, May 1st, 2020. Oh dear, I am concerned that blank does not understand what bicalutamide does. It's not just a blocker. It will cause breast development. The family seems certain that was their first choice of therapy to start with. The statement made in the letter that at times it seems scary, so she wants to move slowly, but eventually sees herself as being on estrogen is concerning. What do we do now? When you saw that, what did you think?
The concerning element to this is that this drug is actually a prostate cancer drug. This drug was created to treat prostate cancer in men. The adult center would not even use this drug on adult patients at the center. Yet we were using essentially an experimental treatment on children. And then we have clear indications that families do not understand what they're consenting to. And part of the trouble with only a 1-hour visit with the endocrinologist before you start treatment is that you have the child in the room with the parents. You set up all of these power triangulation dynamics where the parent would turn to the kid and basically say, are you sure this is what you want? And have to consent for an experimental treatment in the course of 30 minutes, while the doctor might have also just said to the parent, you can do this or your child will commit suicide. Those are not the conditions to give a family true informed consent for medical care.
Well, here's another email sent to Jamie from a parent of a patient. Please be advised that I'm revoking my consent for this course of medical treatment. Grades have dropped. There's been an inpatient behavioral health visit, and now he's on 5 different medications, Lexapro, Trazodone, Buspar, etc. Blank is a shell of his former self, riddled with anxiety. Who knows if it's because of the hormone blockers or the other medications? I revoke my consent. I want the hormone blocker removed.
The mom, who was a legal guardian, sent us that email, and we acted like we knew better than a parent, and we refused to remove the blocker.
Coming up, I want to add some important voices to the conversation. We're going to talk to a trans advocate who says restricting access to gender-affirming care is extremely dangerous for trans youth. We're going to hear that side when we come back.
Now, within the realm of gender-affirming care, there are 2 routes that we can kind of go. There are puberty blockers, which are medications that will stop the body from going through the biological matched puberty, which when we talk to trans people and when we listen to the experiences that they've had, they have all pretty much reverberated the same thing, that puberty is one of the most triggering things that a trans person can go through in a body that they do not identify with. And then there also is HRT, which is hormone replacement therapy in the form of either testosterone injections, testosterone gel, hormone implants that you can get. Now, I will say a lot of the people who have a lot to say on this topic have never even stopped to have a conversation with a trans child or a trans person by any means.
Okay, I want to add two other voices to this conversation. Dr. Lior Sapir, a fellow at the Manhattan Institute, where he focuses on the research behind pediatric gender medicine and the policies different countries have taken on this area of practice. And my good friend, Sandy Moore, she is a celebrated advocate for the trans community. And we've been friends for a long time. It's good to see you again. And
good to see you too, Dr.
came in
Phil.
on really short notice, so thank you for doing that.
I did.
I appreciate it.
Anything for you, Dr. Phil.
Let me ask you, out of everything that you've been listening to, are you surprised? We were just talking with Jamie, and she was saying that this has really been kind of a reactive sort of thing without the clinical protocols that you would expect to screen these patients, particularly these young patients, before instituting a protocol. Is that an isolated situation, or is this something that's more widespread?
It is absolutely widespread. What Jamie is describing is systemic, and it flows from the nature of the treatment protocol itself and the ideology that underwrites it. And that ideology is called gender-affirming care, which is why I don't prefer to use that term. I prefer a more neutral scientific term, which is sex trait modification or pediatric sex trait modification. Gender-affirming care is a term of approval. It's marketing. In the same way that child abuse, calling this child abuse, is also a term of disapproval. These are moral terms. But the neutral scientific term is sex trait modification. And what Jamie is describing, what we know based on data, is happening at most, if not all, clinics across the United States. And I think one of the most important things to understand about this debate is that the United States is increasingly becoming an outlier in this area of medicine.
And Shandy, what do you think about this? Because this is a lived experience for you.
Yes, it is, Dr. Phil. Yes, it is. I'm not going to call him transphobic. I'm not going to do that, although I thought about it. But I'm not going to call him that. What I'm going to say is that he could find some better things to do with his time versus going after our community. We sit in the space of being uncomfortable our whole lives until we decide to come out and be who we are. That takes a lot of courage. Takes a lot of strength. It takes a lot of everything to move forward with your life and not live your life based on what other people want for you. Well, if children know who they are, which they do, and their parents seek out the information to help them be happy in their skin, who are you to block them from doing that?
I think the important question was if children know who they are.
Children do know who they are.
At what age?
At 3, 4, 5, they know who they are when they're switching and swirling. They know who they are. I wish that when I started my transition, I was able to transition earlier in life because that helps you be more feminine or more masculine by using the blockers. You know, that helps people blend in society more.
I say something about the idea that kids know who they are. I think the very existence of detransitioners shows that that's not true. Because these kids arrived at the clinic confident, 100% convinced that they knew who they were. Their parents were 100% convinced, apparently because they gave consent, that these treatments are correct. And yet, these kids, very shortly after they got double mastectomies or subjected their bodies to irreversible, often sterilizing treatments, and by the way, if you do the full course of medical transition, even just hormonal, it is guaranteed chemical castration for the rest of your life. And these kids went into that office knowing who they are, and yet very quickly after that regretted it. And no less important, the doctors who saw them were convinced that these kids know who they are, and they got it wrong.
But how often does that happen?
Okay, so great question.
Yes.
In order to have a good, reliable picture of the rates of detransition, we're going to have to wait at least another decade, probably two. That's, by the way, what clinicians in Europe are saying now, because regret can take a long time to manifest. If you got your breasts amputated at the age of 15, the full consequences of that may not be apparent to you until you're in your mid-30s and can't breastfeed. But current research does show, I mean, we have one research paper from 2021 that showed a 30% discontinuation rate of hormones. And that rate is likely to go up and up and up because the protocol being used at these clinics is kids know who they are. There's no safeguarding, there's no second guessing of a kid's stated identity. And the fewer safeguards we have, the less questioning that we do of these kids' motives and mindset, the higher the rate of regret and detransition and medical harm is going to be.
So when your research can produce that, then we can take that. But your research doesn't produce that.
Well, I'm curious if Shandy ever had any doubts or second thoughts in her journey, and I'll ask her that right after the break.
This medicine is like the bridge between me saying that I'm trans and being trans.
They would split them up at preschool, like girls on this side, boys on that side, and she would go with the girls, and they would explain, like, you're a boy, you need to go over here. And she started to become really distressed about it. One day she came home and the teacher had told her that God made you a boy. And she crawled up in my lap and she said, how can I get God to change his mind? And just cried. So I went out and bought her dresses.
Well, we're back and we're talking about how young is too young to transition. You've been listening to what Jamie said and some of those that were having really bad reactions to the treatment protocols. And what do you think about what she's had to say? I mean, these are real lived experiences that she's spent in 4.5 years at a clinic.
That's not how it works at our clinic. And you just don't hop into things that way. It takes time. And as the doctor said, that there isn't enough time, but I think out of working in this area for 12 years, maybe I've seen 2 people who changed their mind on their transition out of all the hundreds of patients that we've seen. So that's why I can say that sometimes they do, or say that they know who they are, because that's been the track record that has been what I've seen.
Did you ever have any doubts?
My only thing is that I didn't do it soon enough. I was so focused on what people were going to say to my parents and what kind of questions they were going to be asked. And, I was living for everybody except for myself. So finally, when I did wake up and decide that today is the day you need to start living for you and not focusing on what everybody else is thinking and what they're going through, that's when my life kind of kicked off and I was able to start really living life as it's supposed to be lived.
Mm-hmm. Can I say something about I believe you that you've only seen 2 kids who have said we regret it. Mm-hmm. In 2021, a researcher and physician by the name of Lisa Littman conducted a survey of 100 detransitioners. And she found that 75%, so 75 of the detransitioners said that after they had experienced regret about the harm that was inflicted upon them by the doctors, they never went back to those doctors. In other words, the system had completely forgotten about them. And that is a constant recurring problem in this area of medicine, that clinicians and those who kind of operate within the gender clinic environment believe that the rates of regret are extremely low because all of the kids who are regretting it don't come back to them, and for good reason. So I just think it's very important to put this into context. This is a new experimental area of medicine. We have extremely poor data, but the countries that have done the most rigorous methods of evidence analysis are backing away from it, and they're backing away from it quickly.
What is your advice to a parent that has a child that says, I want to transition, I want to make a change?
I think that the American Academy of Pediatrics actually needs to go back and inform pediatricians. The problem is that these kids are exploring, questioning, or having concerns about their gender. They're going to a pediatrician's office, and instead of the pediatrician doing their job, they're immediately referring these kids to a specialty gender center. The pediatrician needs to inform the parent, it is okay for your child to explore things about their gender. Wear whatever clothes you want. If the little boys want to put on nail polish, who cares? If they want to wear their hair different or experiment and play with different kinds of toys, those should be things that the pediatricians are telling parents, let your children explore. But instead, what we're doing is we're taking a child who has questions at all and we're pigeonholing them and telling them, no, you're trans, no, you're trans. We need to open up how we express gender in our society so that you never had the experience where you couldn't feel like you could walk down the street. I wish that that would have been changed, that instead of changing our kids' bodies, we would change our society so that we would not be beating up people for walking down the street dressed differently.
Yep.
Oh, preach on, sister. Coming up, final thoughts on this complex issue. We'll be right back. We must keep in mind that gender identity is a complex issue that sometimes takes a young person years to truly explore and understand. I've got two whistleblowers here that have been talking about what's gone on in their clinics that deal with this. They have been labeled transphobic right here by Shandy, who doesn't mince words at all. I have to disagree with you. I don't think...
No, I didn't call them transphobic, Dr. Phil. I said I thought about it.
Okay,
I'll take that.
That's fair. She said, I'm not calling you transphobic, but I thought about it.
I thought about it.
Yeah,
But
I appreciate that.
All right, there you go. Does anybody out here have any question for any of the four up here that you want to ask or any comment that you want to make? If you do, raise your hand. We'll get you a microphone. Over here in the front row. Yes, go ahead.
I understand that you may think that children know what they want, but coming from a child, I have thought that I've wanted something, and years later, probably not a great idea and not what I wanted. So I think that we should give people the opportunity to want to grow, change, and evolve. And if that's something that they want later in life after they're 18, by all means, go for it. But I think that we should give people an opportunity to be aware of the consequences that may happen from these choices, be aware of things that can really harmfully alter their body and things like that.
Parents should be involved with all of these things, getting this information about these things before they let their child do it. I just think that parents need to be just as involved in their kids knowing who they are.
We were lying to the parents.
Were you?
We were lying to parents.
Okay.
We knew we saw the lacerations. And when the parents said, have you seen any complications? We said, no.
Okay.
We knew we saw detransitioners. And when the parents said, do you see any detransitioners? We said no. Parents are not getting...
I can't put you at complete fault for that, because I think that parents need to do their homework just as well and get that information and follow behind what they hear from you.
Doctors have to be able to tell the truth.
Can I say one thing?
Okay, you're going to say the last thing because we're going to go.
Yes. I think
so make it really smart. No pressure.
No pressure.
Good luck.
Your question is great. Framing this as a matter of choice is very American, and putting this on parents is wrong. Doctors should not be offering this in the first place. Doctors have a moral obligation and a professional duty to first do no harm. And to put this on parents with threats of suicide strikes me as parental abuse by the medical establishment. We need to stop putting this on parents. We need to stop saying, let the parents decide. We should have doctors act responsibly as medical professionals.
Okay, well, we can certainly all decide that we want the best for our children, and I think we need to really expect people to be transparent, and if they're not, we need to really be suspicious. And we always said in front of a jury, if somebody's withholding something, you can conclude to their detriment why they're hiding it. And I want to thank all of my guests Beginning with Dr. Heim, thank you for being here. Jamie, thank you for being here. Dr. Lior, thank you for being here.
Yes.
Thank you, as always. Appreciate it.
Dr. Phil.
You guys are pioneers because you're in the first few shows for Dr. Phil Primetime, and you're on the first few shows for Merritt Street Media. And our mission here is to have a destination network that you can turn on in the morning. We're trying to provide television that you can use. And I have a new book out called We've Got Issues, How to Stand Strong for America's Soul and Sanity. And if that doesn't speak for itself, then I can't help you. So we'll talk to you soon. Thanks for being here. Hey, Dr. Phil here. My network, Merritt TV, has it all.
Now, let me blow your mind.
Merritt TV's got the news that matters.
The selection of a new pope.
Entertainment you crave.
Busted. Everybody in a good mood today?
And live events.
Surprise.
What am I, chopped liver?
With serious punch.
Big shot.
Go to MerrittTV.com and download the Merritt TV app today.